What's up, guys? Nolan here, going to be going through the freshly revealed U.S. Special Forces deck for Broken Arrow. So if you find anything I say useful, please remember to sub for more, like, and comment what you think. Unless you want me to primarily post these as YouTube shorts like everybody else is doing these days, or just stream all the time, I could really use the support over here. Thank you very much, guys. Face value, as the trailer plays in the background here, the hype right now is this is infantry that will stop Russian armor. And I have to be honest, I don't see it stopping Russian armor until I see it, which might be soon, actually. I will be able to play test next week with 2 new single-player missions and access to limited multiplayer tests. I will try and get as much footage as I can, but chances are these content creators or press that they're going to be giving access to are only playing for the explosions on the screen and the single-player stuff, not the multiplayer gameplay. They literally give access to people that don't even know you can call in more units. I have yet to have a game against press or content creators that wasn't just a complete blowout. So, probably not exactly what you crowd are looking for. And don't get me wrong, lots of you guys are definitely here for single-player. I'll play the single-player. I'll play the scenarios too, and I will show that gameplay when I get to do it for sure. But I really like the multiplayer. I really want to play the multiplayer. So seeing as this is next week, it's possible that we don't get SF or strikers in it, but then again, it's possible that we do. Or maybe we do get the Motostrelki 2 for Russia. Maybe we even get that other spec that we haven't seen yet. I don't actually know what's going to be in it. We'll have to wait and see. As it stands, the Russian airborne and Russian armor decks will presumably still go toe-to-toe, no problem with these. Now that's, again, face value stuff. I'll continue to play that trailer in the background, which, by the way, if you haven't seen it, link in the description. But I will be getting the rest of this information between the Patreon as well as the Steam post. If you go over to the Broken Arrow Steam, you'll find that there as well. Link below for that stuff if you want to read along. Now, the RAWs and MAWs are the key weapon systems on the ground here as the most plentiful anti-tank and most deadly. It should go through all T-15s and APS vehicles, but only if they can reach them. Reason being, the amount. Lots of those, as well as javelins here. Pretty much every single infantry squad, every recon squad even, can carry a rocket launcher or an ATGM of some type. Between the RAWs, MAWs, or javelin, sometimes AT-4s. So as long as you stay stealthy and get close enough, they will do the trick. And the reason why I know that is because we've all seen it before already. These are just a bit better MAWs or RAWs that we have seen with the Marine Raiders using, and they regularly defeated armor when stacked correctly. And that was with just 2 if they were stacked. Some of these squads have 3 as a single squad. So you will not be pushing in any direction hard with this spec against competent enemies because there isn't enough armor. You're not going to be able to get through a field. You'll probably be able to get through a tree line, but it's going to be tough getting through a field, getting down a road, things like that. It's infantry still at the end of the day. This is a recon and defense spec. You will need a Marine or armored to be able to actually push. The strikers could be okay, but airborne will be a problem. You won't have enough armor on the ground. You won't really have anything on the ground in terms of vehicles. And I see many games in the future where newer players mess up with the team composition because Spec Ops and airborne decks allow for the most badass infantry, helicopters, and planes, which will definitely do a good job doing what they want to do with them, but nothing truly solid on the ground. More on that later. The anti-tank launchers and ATGMs will put on a show for sure, but not from planes. No Mavericks or anything. The air will be devastating for air-to-air and bomb-wise, but the seed and anti-tank threats from Striker or Marine will need to carry this, assuming you've actually teamed them up, this deck to allow your air to do what it needs to do to win. Seemingly, only the F-35 with 2 harms and likely only 2 availability isn't going to be enough. It's possible they're stealthy enough to just get in and bomb, as the Raptor can have bombs too, but also has the JADM, so that will be needed for air-to-air balance. I also don't see artillery possible here, while there's practically no vehicle tab, and just actually support tab in general for this SF spec. The infantry will be sneaky and hit hard, but no doubt slow and short on ammunition. The helicopters will be spicy, and the air will dominate what it chooses to, except the only thing is it can either choose air-to-air or bombing, like I said before, at a cost because it won't be effective enough at seed unless they're stealthy enough to just, again, dodge the AA and bomb what they want. Saving grace could be a 4 or more availability with the F-35A. If it's just 2, which I presume it actually is, that's going to be a maximum of 4 harm missiles, which won't be enough of a deterrent to have a safe bombing run. just risky ones, which you'll likely still drop, but unlikely to make it out if you don't kill all of the AA. You got to remember, vast majority of times, especially if you are not playing in a team stack, especially if you are playing the solo, you're going to be on your own. So you got to send that seed plane with your bomber. So again, unless, key thing being here, unless these units are stealthy enough, like similar to the F-35B was in the previous test, and you're not a complete idiot, and you actually make sure you go around the edges, or maybe you do a little bit of artillery run or something, or maybe you just pick a good spot that doesn't have that much SAM threat. They can get in, just drop what they need to drop in terms of bombs, and potentially even just get out. Or at least you bombed what you needed to bomb, and you could push through on the ground what you needed to do. But the seed on its own is weak. Very similar to the U.S. Airborne in that respect. Players who don't properly defend the airspace will complain that this deck is overpowered. Newer players and team stacks will put the bombs on the Raptors and the F-35s and the B-2 to just point and click anything that spam them down. We still haven't seen the full capacity or capability of Russia with, you know, they're going to have more S-300s, probably more S-400s, maybe even S-500s, as well as Tunguskas, Osas, Pantsir, Strela, Bucks, different types of Bucks, Tors, different types of Tors, and that's just on the ground. In the air, there's still Foxbats and Su-27s along with their variants. It'll be tough when played correctly. Team composition-wise, if you have 1 to 2 people tops using this spec in a deck, strictly as support, while the rest focus on pushing on the ground as well as AA, that will be a great game. That is a great composition. This is a epic support deck. However, if everyone in your team uses this, you will likely lose any game against competent players due to the fumble factor and lack of armor. In case anyone is unaware, fumble factor being RNG. RNG is always going to have a say. Sure, you can have a Raptor. It's going to have the best stealth in the game. It'll have the best survivability in the game. It should, in theory, be able to go and bomb whatever you need to bomb. But just when you thought that, watch it get one shot by an S-300 or like an R-37 or something like that. You'll see. Fumble factor. Now, that was the general TLDR or summary, but we'll go unit to unit now. And again, if you guys want to see this, it's going to be linked in the description, but I'll give my full take on each of these. Now, the Recon Rangers are cool. That's going to be a reoccurring factor here. These are cool infantry. I'm definitely going to use them, but in terms of the meta, from at least from the last test, we'll see what they end up doing. That's all I'm trying to say there on that end of things. Now, they can come with MAWs, which are great. You'll see those a lot. The Ranger snipers can get the usual rifles along with the 50 cal again, and with AT4s this time, so they can maybe stop a vehicle or two that's thicker than a truck more reliably. Green Berets are really cool. They have a super diverse loadout, set of loadout options from snipers to DMRs, grenade launchers, and close quarters. Even packing a flash launcher, which I didn't even know they used anymore. But Steel Ball Leica does a good job of picking some interesting stuff when it comes to weapon systems that keep things interesting. That'll also be a recurring factor. We'll be talking more about that in a minute. There's Para-Rescue. These are interesting. They can either clear buildings very quickly with their weapon systems, or snipe or sting with a Stinger J, a more effective man-pad Stinger missile. The MATV, MATV can have the usual weaponry, including a javelin and a dude just sticking out of the top with a 50 cal sniper rifle, so that guy can shoot when it's not moving. That's interesting. You can have as many of these as you can recon or infantry squads, I would imagine. So along with the amount of javelins, that will cause a serious issue. We will just have to wait and see exactly what recon and or infantry squads can have these MATVs. Because I tell you what, if you can have, let's say, 2 or maybe even 3 of these for every T-15 out there, guess what's not going to be a problem anymore? Well, technically it wasn't a problem, but that's a discussion for another day. But guess what's really not going to be a problem anymore? T-15s. We got a stealth drone with the RQ-170. We will have to wait and see how far it can see and how far it can be seen since it's stealth. Definitely going to be testing that a lot. The Reaper arrives, the actual Reaper, as well as with loads of weapons that most of the time against competent enemies likely won't be able to be used before getting shot down realistically. However, it's handy as a behind-the-line sweep-up, some sneaky recon kind of deal with those bombs. I occasionally found uses for it against newer teams during the last test, if people forgot to bring some proper AA, or you ran them out of ammunition. Pretty handy little things. For the Recon tab as a whole, I'll likely max out those 170s. Probably going to be 2 like the others, because drones are extremely powerful. The MATVs with javelins and the team that allows those for transports, the infantry team, the Recon team that allows them for transports, because, fire support. A couple sniper teams with suppressors for being behind the line supply snipers. The Para-Rescue for their stingers, and again, behind the line anti-chopper. And if I could spare the points at that point, the Green Berets with those mods as genuine frontline recon troops. For infantry, we got the Delta Force as what will likely be the best infantry squad in the game. 12 strong with a CQC loadout that can apparently clear a building in seconds, or long range with new 6.5 Creedmoor rifles. What I don't see is the mention of anti-tank, so maybe it won't be an issue if you stack them with other squads because there's plenty of anti-tank with the other squads or vehicles, but I don't usually like infantry without AT personally, so we'll see what's going on with this. Rangers are 9-man squads with bunker busting SMAs or heavy scars, and you guessed it, more RAWs or MAWs. I'll likely go with the scars and the MAWs myself. Then we have RAWs on RAWs on RAWs as we get a straight up RAWs squad with 3 total launchers. This will, well, technically one-shot any tank in the game, as the first round of 3 will get eaten by the APS and use it up, while as long as the other 2 are close behind it, which they should be because you have 3 launchers in the squad, it will likely kill that vehicle. If the Marine Raiders MAWs are anything to go by, which they really should be, that is going to be the case. Now, these do only have 600 meter range here, so unless they go with like these guys are more skilled or something like that, it's probably still going to be 600 meter. Maybe for some reason or another, like I said, if they make them quote-unquote skilled or they give them some kind of plot armor with this or something like that, they can go up to 800. I'm not sure what exactly they're going to do. They're most likely going to be 600 meters distance. So use all of these that you can with squads like, you know, and if they're going to be used like Raiders, you'll be fine, but try to reach and you're going to fall short. These are not ATGMs. These things are like killer beehives, though. In the grand scheme of things, if you stay far away, you're fine, but if you get up close, you're screwed. And that's in terms of, you know, the enemy. I'm talking from a third-person perspective for going, you know, the enemy coming at you. Some Russians come at you, they got a bad day. That's all I'm trying to say. But if you forget to turn off those long-range rifles, they start picking at some infantry. Those infantry have some fire support by way of T-15s or tanks or something like that. You're not going to be able to reach out and touch those. You're going to want to make sure that you get back in cover and you don't let those fire support units actually hit your infantry because they will die. Now, speaking of AT, the Ranger Support Squad has some too. You get heavy machine guns along with either a modern Stinger missile like the Pararescue or a newer, more deadly Javelin missile with longer range, likely the best the U.S. can field for infantry support squads. There's a grenade launcher team, and usually I field these for anti-infantry and light vehicle, but I think it's probably handled elsewhere in this case for this specific spec. Although these are airburst grenades, able to hit helicopters as well. So I'm going to test them and we'll see what they end up doing against those. The vehicle tab as a whole likely doesn't exist, but there are some vehicle transports like the RSOV. That lacks any heavy weapons, so I probably won't use it. The GMV can't get an autocannon, so I'm going to check that out. The LMTV Warpig is a crazy looking thing with likely the ability to carry supplies. We'll see what's going on with that. I would think along with some rockets and the tow launcher there, so we'll check those out. Things get real spicy here. We got the 160th SOAR choppers as these transports first. The Little Bird has no flares or countermeasures, so I likely won't use it. Potentially more as like a recon, like a cheap recon there. We'll see what's going on there. The Blackhawk has upgraded side guns, so it might actually be a pretty nice little cheap fire support. We'll see what's going on with that. The Silent Hawk will for sure be my main transport for sneaking units to the front or behind the front, as long as it actually is stealthy. We'll find out. The Chinook will carry my supplies and light vehicles as usual. This one is much more survivable than the other one, so it should be cool there. I use the Osprey a lot in my Marine decks because of the speed, but I don't know if it'll be needed here with the access to the other helicopters. I don't exactly need it to take up the spots or take up those slots or points in that helicopter tab. We'll see what that ends up looking like when I can actually build a deck. But it will be handy for quickly getting sneaky recon and infantry places, though. I'll see what I do with it. The attack choppers are fantastic. The Little Bird is, if it can use the Fire Forget Hellfires, going to be a monster for cheap, and I could see it sitting close behind my lines at all times with that. Just make sure, you know, the AA and the SHORAD from the Russians can't see it because they're pretty good at killing helicopters. The DAP apparently has one of the best ECM defense systems, so I like to see what that can do as a multi-role attack or supply or both chopper, you know, multi-role. The Comanche will be fantastic stealthy recon. I might use it just for that and then keep it as cheap as possible because I'm sure apart from some trucks and the Little Birds, nothing here will be cheap. I'm curious what its stealth allows it to get away with, though, in terms of rocket and hellfire attacks. However, the cream of the crop is the brand new top of the line Apache Guardian with added ECM protection, optics, and JAGM missiles. I will have at least one of these in every single deck for sure. These are likely going to take the top spot for ATGM helicopters from the Mi-28 or the Catran. Although they're not seed or cruise missiles, they should be insanely deadly to armor. So a bit of hunter-killer going on. Maybe they see the Guardian down at the end of the road. They get worried about that. Next thing they know, they got a couple of little birds popping up on the flanks and even a Comanche behind them, something like that. That's gonna happen eventually. There's gonna be some really cool helicopter plays being played with this spec. For fixed wing, we got the Spooky. I've talked about this a lot already, and everything remains the same. If you can get this above the enemy, then it will kill everything, but you won't get it above any competent enemy unless you have dedicated seed and anti-air players on your team. The same thing goes for the H version if you try to airdrop with it. I'm going to have a lot of fun trying to actually get this to work above competent enemies, though, don't you worry. The Nighthawk is back, and it's basically a slower F-35B from the previous test, just 2 less AMRAMs, but a little better bomb payload. I could see this being able to stay stealthy and drop whatever it's carrying, whether it be dumb or smart bombs, reliably, but we'll see with its speed if it actually gets away with it, as it survives. I could see it being a nice little cheap sniper of sorts with the JASMs, quickly shooting them from afar and evacing without even being seen. And thank God we got the F-35A with this spec. I wasn't sure if we would. However, it's not all good news. It can only carry 2 seed missiles. They're not newer, and they can't get the JADM either. It's an F-35B from the last test, but you can carry 2 more seed missiles, or you can carry 2 seed missiles to begin with and a bit more bombs. I will likely outfit these most of the time with those 2 seed missiles, maybe the Stormbreakers. It's going to require testing. The ability to carry up to 6 AMRAMs is enticing for air-to-air, though, especially with our guest of honor here, too, the Raptor. The Raptor does indeed get the JADM long-range missiles, as well as AMRAMs, as well as Sidewinder X's, AIM-9 X's. Those JADMs for the longer range, which was vital for the entire U.S. nation in this game. I think for the sake of your team, if you're going to use this spec, you need to bring as many Raptors as you can, which will likely be 2. I'll be surprised if you can take 4 of these, with as many JADMs as you can, which will likely be 6. Maybe switching it up to have 3 JADM and 3 AMRAM would be better, but I could see this sitting in the back and sniping very effectively. However, if you really need something dead, it will be better to have the AMRAMs on there. So while it's flying at its target, it fires the JADM from far, then fires the AMRAM when it gets a bit closer, and then gets to fire the Sidewinder when it's actually right on top of it. It will also likely ripple fire, though, so maybe JADM is enough because it'll fire 2 at a time. And then again, we'll have to wait and see what it does when you actually turn off the anti-overkill stuff. But for right now, I think it's better. I would think it would be better if you keep the anti-overkill on, load it up with JADMs, keep it as a sniper, and then use the F-35s or something from another spec to actually bomb or get in closer. Now that is as long as I'm not using the B2. This thing can carry an insane amount of bombs and missiles, as well as a nuke, which is not a cruise missile nuke. It is another bomb nuke. Now, this thing is the first stealth strategic bomber. Well, I guess first stealth bomber really at all. So I can't say it will act like the other strategic bombers and die against competent enemies, but I'm leaning heavily towards it will still die against competent enemies and end up being an expensive weight on your air tab, of which is a pretty important one to your team. What is very possible is this thing is amazing at staying hidden behind your line and tossing those 16 JASMs, anyone that doesn't know, the stealthy cruise missiles, up to the front, then getting out alive because it was never seen. Or even if it is seen, because of the ECM and stealth, it's very hard to hit at that distance. I could see that being the most efficient use, followed at a distance by the laser-guided 2,000-pound JDAMs, because you'll still need to fly above the front line to drop them, so at that point, it's the exact same as using the other strategic bombers. Although, again, stealth, ECM, definitely going to be more survivable, but you're over the front line. It's probably going to die. If it can survive the trip, then cool, but chances are against proper enemies, it won't. Especially now that we're getting the anti-overkill turned off, or ability to toggle it. So, now what do we use this with? We have all 5 US specs for full release revealed. Marine, Armored, and Airborne, we know well, while Striker, we can guess, will be Infantry, Recon, Support, Air, and then Vehicle. SF looks to be Recon, Infantry, Air, and Helicopter in that order for priority and points availability for both. My guess is Marine will go well with either of these with the padded air and infantry tab and still being able to field a couple heavy tanks and push. Sticking with SF, let's go through each though. The obvious worst choice to me is Special Forces Airborne because you're left with too few heavy units on the ground. A good player will notice that at the start and exploit it unless you coordinate well with your team. It also leaves your air tab a bit vulnerable with the lack of seed. Even though you have some, the planes are good, you'd need to stack the F-15EX and the F-35A with those seed missiles, and that might be okay, but it's really expensive for you to not, miss that much of a punch in your primary role that you're looking for. F-15EX, again, with its bombers or with its air-to-air ability to just be an absolute truck. If you focus air-to-air as well as ground support, then it will crush if it can stay alive, and that's just the spec in general. For those who don't know, the U.S. Airborne is getting the A-10 instead of Strikers, so you will have Mavericks available through the A-10. The downside being you won't have something faster with air-launched ATGMs. You're going to have to count on your helicopters for the QRF in terms of heavy armor pushing you. The air tab still feels weird compared to Russia's flexibility, and because for some reason with them, everything with wings is able to launch a long-range missile, as well as ECM, because you can stick the ECM pods on practically everything as well, or for some reason it just starts with 20%. But we'll see what that looks like again with this SF stuff. The SF Marine deck will be strong, well-rounded master of infantry and helicopters for sure with an ability to seed and push with armor. The Prowlers with anti-overkill turned off will spam down seed targets, and you can fly a Raptor over them with bombs simultaneously, similar to the Su-57 with Russia. So you get both F-35s to do what you will, and the Harriers or Hornets for Mavericks. Your AA will be very weak. You have no SAM missiles at all, but some SHORAD. If you tag team with specifically an armored or striker, or even better, a armored striker player, you will be super dangerous on that flank. Keeping in mind that Steel Balalaika intend to balance this game based off of a group of 5 players. Not one deck versus another, but a group of 5 versus another group of 5. It's a team effort here, boys. Special Forces Armored will be nasty, but the price of those units will be a problem. Everything is expensive, while the SF Air Tab will need to survive on its own. You'll likely be better off prioritizing air-to-air and a little ground support, then focus on pushing on the ground and holding what you take with your infantry. The tanks will do their job, you have some badass artillery, you have badass recon, and the Patriots will help with planes if you're too slow to call out yours. Special Forces Striker could be very good. The Seed F-16s, with the extra availability to the Recon, Infantry, and Air Tab, will make the strengths of these two specs shine while still having a bit of AA, artillery, supply, and not completely useless armor. It's not even really considered armor, it's just vehicles in general, but you can push up a road. The speed of the Strikers and the APS that you'll be able to bring along with them will allow you to rush a position, preferably with a road attached to it, drop off insane infantry, then fall back to support or pick up more. That's my diagnosis of the US decks in general there with that one. Yet to be seen, of course, with SF, Striker, or any other balancing changes that they may or may not have had or made since the previous test. Now, last but not least, the lack of a specific unit in this Special Forces deck being the U.S. Navy SEALs, or for that matter, an F-35C in this spec points us to the next spec after release being what was completely presumed, if not confirmed before. I actually bit foggy on that one there. The devs or Felix or somebody might have even said this before, but it's very confident to be a Navy spec. It's almost a certainty at this point. In a game like this, I don't see them not adding the Navy SEALs, the F-35C, the Growler, or the Super Hornets at all. Reminder, those are not Super Hornets in the Marine deck. They're just regular old Hornets in that Marine tab. We're also missing that helicopter drone, and there's other little types of like JLTVs and its variants and stuff like that. So maybe similar to the Russians, the Russian armored there having Moto Strelky in their armored spec when they have their own spec. Maybe the Marines will double dip a little bit, or the Navy tab will forward the Navy tab. Or that could just be very light on infantry. Some specs are completely light on support or vehicles. Maybe this Navy spec will be light on infantry because it is, boats. So it would make sense. Now, Felix did say they were on the fence about naval units in that combat, such as, ships, but maybe they'll end up pulling through anyway. We'll have to wait and see way later in the year for that one because, again, SF was the final U.S. spec, and I would imagine if they're not going to add a Navy spec at release for the U.S., then they won't do it for Russia either. So at least for full release, no Navy, no F-35C, no Navy SEALs, no little recon helicopter drone thing, no boats. I will keep you guys up to date on what's happening next week. Maybe I'll even stream if I can. I'm not sure what's possible. I'm not even sure if the new specs will be available, but I will be able to play this game next week. In terms of when you guys will be able to play, all we know is June for now. I'd still say there's a good chance that we get another open beta of some kind again before release, but if not, they're still on pace for June. They said it at the end of the trailer there. We have the last 2 Russian specs to check out before then, along with the scenario editor and any campaign stuff that they might want to share or reveal before that as well. So about 2 months left here, boys. 60 days, give or take, and we will be back home again. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Debrief podcast, where we'll go into greater detail. We'll do a bit of back and forth on what we think and why of the U.S. specs in general, now that we've seen them all. Really appreciate all the support that you can possibly give me over here. Comment what you think, please, guys. Click all the buttons on the screen to support. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a nice day. See you guys.